Welcome to the video. In this video, I'd like to answer, can my parents force me to marry somebody? Or do my parents have the right to tell me who I should marry or when I should marry? Can they pick my spouse for me? Now, this is not something that as Aussies, right, we don't encounter this problem much here, right? And truthfully, over the last 10 years of my ministry, I've encountered a handful of people that have come from cultures from overseas, and then they've moved here, and their parents have this mentality that they have a real responsibility or a right or the power to choose who their child should marry. Okay, we don't see it a lot here, truthfully, but I've seen it enough to know that it's still something that I should speak about. So I recently spoke. I spoke at a youth camp where these kids were asked to write their questions down, on paper, and put them in a basket and give them to me at the end to answer. And I found, when I looked over the questions, probably 30 or 40% of the questions were from the kids asking, do they have the power to arrange my marriage or arrange who I should marry? Okay, so I've heard of the more extreme cases, okay, where parents may say, to their adult child, look, this is the person, we know his or her parents, we know they're a good family, and we would like you to marry their son or their daughter. We're going to introduce you both, okay? So we're going to go over their place, or they're going to come over our place. We're going to have a meal, and you'll be allowed to meet them, but it's going to be over the watch of the four parents, and we're going to make sure, that you two just have a simple meeting, a brief meeting, and then they might leave, and then they might actually tell their child that they're not allowed to see them in person, all right? So they must get to know each other over the phone, okay, or online, for example, until their wedding day, right? There's definitely like a middle ground here, okay, that's the more extreme, but it's very common. I've definitely heard of parents saying, look, this is the person we would like you to meet, and once you meet them, if you like them, you can get to know each other, but it must either be at my house or at their house, right? So then being quite controlling over the environment in which they are allowed to get to know the person, right? So they would not be allowed out, even if it's at church events or out with cousins or siblings. All that is gone, right? They're not allowed to mingle with the other. They've got to get to know the person in one of their lounge rooms, right? So, as I said, doesn't generally happen here in Australia as much, but it's certainly still here. So I'd like to address a couple of problems that I see with this and that I'm hearing from young people about what their fears and concerns are with this. Now, before I kind of move into this, I must say, I have met young people, okay, when I say young people, I mean late teens and even girls and guys in their 20s that have said to me, look, they're either on one end of the spectrum quite often. The first is that I've seen this very much where the young person, the teen or the young adult in their 20s, has said, look, I have great respect for my parents. I love my parents to death, and I know that they would never do anything to hurt me. And so if they believed that they had met a great family who had a son or daughter that I should marry, then I'm going to trust that I should marry them. Okay, now, again, there could be other problems around the fact that, I'm scared to let mum and dad down, or it would be a sign of disrespect to not do as they've asked me to do. But in general, there is this kind of willingness that I would want to partner up with mum and dad on this, and if they believe someone's right for me, I should trust them and do it. Okay, that's kind of one side I've seen. The other side I've seen is where, and this is, not coming from parents that want to control who their son or daughter dates, but I've just seen very much in general, Aussies, okay, or, us here, people living, young people living here, this idea that I don't really care what mum and dad think about who I'm dating or who I'm marrying. If we're in love, then we can conquer the world and we can do whatever we want together, and no one should be able to speak into my relationship just because mum and dad don't support who I've picked. I'm ready to do anything to fight for the love that I want, right? And to some extent, there might be cases where that may need to happen or should happen if the parents are giving no kind of helpful reason as to why you wouldn't, as an adult, be allowed to date or pursue somebody. But oftentimes it can stem from an attitude of just saying, well, mum and dad know nothing about relationships, they know nothing about me, they know nothing about love, and so I don't need their advice or support or involvement here at all. Okay? So they're the kind of two ends. Now, what I'd like to offer today is something in the middle. Because although I'm not going to support the first option and say that your parents should be allowed to force you to marry somebody, I also think that having parental involvement and guidance, and even just have the blessing of being able to have open dialogue with your parents to help you to discern the person you'd like to marry, that's really important. Okay, so I don't want to encourage one or the other, but I do want to encourage that I think there are good things we can take from both sides, or from the side of saying parents, I think, should be encouraged to have some level of involvement here. Now, the first problem I have, though, with parents saying you have to marry this person is you need to be free. An absolutely necessary aspect of entering into a marriage that is valid is both the man and the woman must be free to choose that. Okay? There is no real marriage. There's no true love if there's no freedom. Okay? So honestly, a child is now when I say child, I just simply mean a son or daughter that they might be in their 20s as an adult, but a parent's child, okay, adult child, has the right to refuse to be forced to marry someone that they do not want to marry. And in fact, even if they did kind of blindly just marry that person, okay, because they didn't want to let mum and dad down, or they didn't want to cause a problem or act like they were disrespectful, that is not actually, that would not be a valid marriage. Because in order for a marriage to be valid and real, this couple must freely consent to give themselves as a gift in love to the other, and to receive the gift of the other in love also. Okay? So I would really encourage, I'd encourage young people who are more on the side of saying, whoever mum and dad say, I'll just go and marry them. You need to know this needs to be your choice. You must discern and choose the person that you would like to marry. Because what's going to happen is, if 10 years, 15 years time, you begin to really struggle in this marriage that you're in, well, you're going to be tempted to look back and just blame your mum and dad for making you marry them. When truthfully, that's your responsibility and yours only. If you decided to marry somebody, that's on you. You can't blame mum and dad years down the track because they were saying you should marry this person. You must stand up to that and say, if I do not want to marry this person, I'm not going to marry them. Because it probably would not be a valid marriage anyway if you had not freely chosen to marry them. Don't be so blinded by this desire to please mum and dad that you would marry someone you didn't want to. Now, the other major problem that I have with the idea of parents being kind of overly controlling about who you should marry, or even how you should get to know the person that you're going to marry, is the couple need to be given some level of freedom to actually get to know each other properly. Okay? Just because a parent might be good friends with this other set of parents who seem to have good values and morals, the parent does not really know what their child is like. Okay? They don't know for certain whether this child thinks and acts in the same way as the parents might, right? And to come to that conclusion simply because of the family they come from, I'm sorry to say, is quite foolish. You should, as a parent, if you really loved your own child, you would want, even your adult child, you would want your adult child to be given the chance to really get to know what this person is like in the kind of environments that are going to allow their true personhood to show. Honestly, I've met a handful of young people that have said to me, my mum and dad are only going to allow me to get to know this girl that I like her parents are only going to let me get to know her if I go to her house, and sit on her lounge, and I can only talk to her with her mum and dad looking at me in the same room, right? Now, of course, their reason for doing that is they want to make sure the relationship is chaste. Okay, but what are they, like, there's something they're missing that's pretty major there. You're not allowing them to be themselves, right? You're not allowing your child to really see what this guy is like. You're not allowing your son to see what this girl is really like. So by being kind of overly controlling about how they get to know each other, that's likely going to backfire, because your child is not able to discern what this person is really like that you've picked for them, or that you think they should marry, or maybe you haven't had any involvement in it, but you just said, well, if you want to get to know this person, you must do it in this setting, okay? So what I encourage young people to do is, look, if you feel drawn to somebody and you want to get to know them well, then you need to get to know them in 3 settings in the context of faith, family, and friends. So I think, if you are a person of faith, okay, if you are Catholic and you go to church, I always say, look, the best way to get to know somebody is to be actively engaged in your parish's, in the parish life, in your Catholic church, and in whatever events they run, and invite that person to get involved in the things that you do, in the ways that you serve, in the parish life, whatever. But in that kind of a setting, seeing how do they serve other people, how do they treat other people, how do they pray, right? All those questions, they get answered in that kind of a setting, okay? Of course, I'm not saying that you should never spend time at the other person's house on the lounge with the setting of family. That's beautiful. But if that's all you're allowed to do, then you're not seeing the full person. But absolutely, when Madeline and I were really getting to know each other, and when we were in our courtship, we spent a lot of time over each other's houses, getting to know each other's family, allowing our parents to see what we're like as well. But also, it's important to be able to go out as friends, to mingle in friendship groups, or, you know what, we need to be able to trust, as parents, trust your adult child, okay, to be in control of their passions, and to be able to go out on a date together at a restaurant, for example, and be able to order their sexual passions toward love, and to not, just because they're out one night alone, that they're going to fall into sin, okay? We need to exercise freedom here, right? We need to exercise freedom and to choose the good. So just because a parent may have forced a young couple to get to know each other, right, in an overly controlled setting of in their TV room, or on their dining room table, it doesn't necessarily mean that this couple are chaste. Amen? Because you don't measure how chaste a couple are just because they haven't done anything, right? Well, maybe they haven't even had the opportunity to cross any boundaries, right? And so it's really important, okay, that young couples and parents should be fostering this and should be encouraging this. It's important that you allow settings, that you trust them, that you give them the freedom to be together and to learn to use their freedom well, to love each other well with the use of freedom, okay? Now, truthfully, I don't understand why a parent, okay, now as I'm a parent of very young children, 3 very young children, but as a parent, I know, okay, I don't know why a parent would want their child to get to know somebody in that kind of a setting, okay? Because it's not truly allowing them to know, is the guy I'm marrying, is the girl I'm marrying, do I really know them, and are they really a good person? I would want them to go out and meet them in many contexts and in many environments and really know what kind of a person they are, okay? Even more so, I think it's quite foolish for a parent to say, you should marry this person, or we would like you to marry this person, when honestly, how much time, energy, effort, intentional conversation has this parent put into choosing the man or woman they want their child to marry, right? Normally, they base their whole decision off whether or not they like the parents and whether the parents seem to have good values and morals. But there's no guarantee that the child is going to be exactly like the parent, okay? So you need to allow the children, okay, the adult children, to discern each other well. Now, I want to be very clear, I am saying that parents do not have the right to force their child to marry somebody. But so if I am saying that parents should not choose their child's spouse, what involvement do I think is healthy for parents to have in the discernment process of marriage for their child? Okay. Now, I want to say this just as an important point. Okay, the concept, okay, of parents trying to arrange their child's marriage, does that come from a good place or from a bad place? It comes from a good place, or so. Anyway, that's what I have heard from talking to parents that think this way. Is their goal is this? They think, okay, if I want, I've worked really hard to instill certain values and morals and faith beliefs and practices into my child. And so I want to make sure that the person they marry has been raised in a family that has been similar to mine, where the parents share similar attitudes and mindsets to me, that they are people of faith as well. Because, for example, if I have a girl, I want to know that the man she marries is going to continue to foster in her and in their relationship and marriage everything that this parent has worked so hard to give his daughter or their son. Okay, so I'm very understanding that the concept of being involved and wanting to arrange a marriage, it doesn't come simply from being I'm a control freak, but it's that I want to know that they're going to marry someone that has similar values and mindsets, right? So this is understandable. Now, I can see the value in this, and I can agree with that. As a parent now of 3 young children, my children are nowhere near ready to date. My oldest is 3, but I know for sure that I am going. Okay, I am very much going to want my children to be involved. Okay, in parish settings and with like-minded families who are raising their children in a similar way that I'm raising mine, with similar morals, similar values, with similar faith beliefs and backgrounds and practices, because I would hope that when my children do come of age, when they're wanting to discern marriage with somebody, when they want to start dating and courting, I would want to know that I've done my bit as a parent, that I have introduced them to great other young people that have been raised in a similar way that I have raised my children. Because I've got 2 sons and I've got one little girl now, and for my sons, I want to raise them in a way that they would choose a young woman that has been raised similar to them, but that my sons can then lead them and continue leading them in the way that they have been raised. And for my little girl, it might be almost impossible for her to meet somebody I'll be happy with, right? I'm joking, not really, but maybe I am, okay? Is that I would want to know that she is going to be dating and courting and marrying a man that has incredible values, right? Is an awesome man of faith, and is going to lead my little girl in the same way that I have tried to lead her whole life, okay? So, to this extent, I believe that parents should help their children in the whole discernment process of any relationship that they enter into. Now, I remember when I was a young, I'm still a young man, I'd like to think, but when I was single, I remember, okay, as soon as I first met Madeline, I remember coming home and talking about Madeline to mum and dad and sharing the things I was really drawn to about her and really admired about her. And through my whole discernment journey, my mum and dad were open and eager to have normal, healthy conversations around how my discernment process was going. And when I had concerns or when things came up that we were struggling with, okay, sometimes, okay, obviously being respectful to her privacy and my privacy, but there were times that I might, share a little bit about what I was concerned about, and they would be there to guide me and help me through that, okay? Now, sometimes, okay, young people, for fear of their parents giving them the hard truth they may not want to hear, they might withhold the red flags they're seeing in their partner from trusted friends or family members, or from a parent who might be there, who might be able to help guide them through that decision-making process. Okay, so I know the way I'm going to be helping to support my children and who they choose to marry is not by telling them who they must marry, but rather by giving them the freedom, or by encouraging them to spend time with like-minded families and young children who've been raised in the faith, that have similar values and attitudes. So that's a great head start. But I also want, from a very early age, I'm going to be talking to my children about love and about being a gift and about healthy relationships and about what sexuality means and is for, so that if I can continue fostering that conversation with them, that when they get to the age where they do want to date or begin courting, or they're discerning marriage with somebody, that they would feel the freedom to get me involved in that discernment process, to help them and to assist them and to love them. And not because I want to be controlling over who they decide to marry, but I want to simply be there to assist them as much as possible in helping them discern who to marry. Because hopefully I've already done the hard work in training them in freedom, in training them in this proper use of freedom. So that my son, okay, or my little daughter, if they met someone that they were instantly drawn to, but then began to see problems and issues and struggles with this person that might lead them to discern, or maybe I'm not called to marry them, that they would be able to discern themselves, this is not the kind of person I want to marry, and be able to leave. Or that they would continue to see these positive signs and decide to marry, but that I would always be there, and that their mum would always be there to guide and assist and support in any way possible. Now, that's a short video today again, but I want to highlight, okay, that I do have my How to Date with Passion and Purpose course. It's an 8-part video series. Every video there is about, I think it's about a 6 or 7 hour course, and that's available, that you can grab that on the Fire Up website. Just as a little gift, if you use the promo code YouTube, you can get 10% off that course. I hope that video has blessed you, and know that I'm praying for you. God bless.